God bless you, brothers and sisters. I am Oliver Torres, and thank you very much for watching this weekly message, which is a weekly summary of the word that I have received over the weekend from our pastor, which was presented in Spanish, and which I am going to always give my best effort and attempt into translating the original message that we received in Spanish into English for your blessing and the blessing of many others out there that you could easily share with by not only continuing to watch this message, but by sharing it with them. So please spread this good word, which I believe is going to be a healing word, a refreshing word, renewing word, and it's just something that's overall just wonderful to listen to and to be edified by. So I want to jump right into it. I want to read a couple of verses that are going to be our witnesses. As I mentioned in the last video, these are witnesses that we like to lay out at the beginning so that we could better understand the word moving forward. So they're Bible verses that are going to take us forward. Okay. So the first is going to be in the book of Hebrews chapter 10 verse 1. It says, "The law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. For this reason, it can never, by the same sacrifices repeated endlessly year after year, make perfect those who draw near to worship." The next verses that we're going to read are in Hebrews chapter 7. We're going to start on verse 17. It says, "For it is declared you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. The former regulation is set aside because it was weak and useless. For the law made nothing perfect, and better hope is introduced, by which we draw near to God. And it was not without an oath. Others became priests without an oath. But he," of course we know that this is Jesus, right, that they're talking about here. "He became priest with an oath when God said to him, 'The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever.'" And the last thing that we're going to read is in Matthew chapter 16. And I want to read in verse 12 where it says, "Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." So the message, and it was a really beautiful word that we received that I'm going to attempt to summarize here for you, and just I want to keep it to about 10-15 minutes. But really the summary is this, that we need to examine our own lives, and we need to say, or try to realize and try to understand the type of priesthood that we have allowed to govern our lives, because there is something that's governing you. And you could either have the old priesthood, which is essentially the law, and it may have many different faces, many different forms, but at the end of the day, when you look closely at it, it is the law. Or you're going to have the priesthood, which Jesus established when he was in his ministry. There was a change. There was the need for the change. That's what we just finished reading. Now, in Jesus' time, if you've read the Bible, you know that Jesus was confronted by a people that had a very religious, very law-based mentality. Not only were the people at that time being governed by the Romans, but they were also being governed by these teachers, these translators, these interpreters of the law that really were just keeping them in this religious state. They were stubborn, to say the least. They were so stubborn that when Jesus was in his ministry among them, they just simply did not understand what he was doing. They just didn't. And this is where we need to bring it to our time. This is where you need to apply the word to your life. And we need to ask ourselves, as a people, as children of God, what type of priesthood do we have? That's what we have to examine in our own lives. Because depending on the priesthood that you are allowing to govern your life, that I allow to govern my life, everything else is affected by that. Not just your church life, not just the way you read or interpret the Bible. It's going to affect everything. It's going to affect how you recover from a job loss, right? It's going to affect the way that you view divorce, a broken relationship, the way that you're going to view any failure that you may have, a perceived failure that you may have in your life. Every situation is going to be influenced by the priesthood that you have allowed to govern your life. So examine your life, the type of priesthood that you have governing your life. Is it based off of the law, which you may say, oh, it's a realistic mentality. This is what I should expect? Well, let me tell you something that Pastor shared with us. And this was something that God said to him personally, but he shared it with the congregation. It went like this. He said, when my people abandon religion, then I will reveal myself to them. He also said this, as long as you dress divinity with religion, my true nature will never be revealed. As long as you dress divinity with religion, God's true nature will never truly be revealed in your life. You know why? Because God is not religion. God is not the law in the sense of that old priesthood. He established something new with his son. Jesus established a new priesthood, something that was no longer based off of the law. It was something to where, more than anything, when Jesus came in his ministry, he tried to change the mentality of the people. He didn't break the law, but he changed, or he went against tradition, the mentality that these teachers and these interpreters of the law had placed upon the people. So I want you, as I had to, I want you to examine your life. What type of priesthood do you have governing you? What is it that is influencing the way that you think? Is it a religious mentality? Pastor said this weekend in one of his messages, he said, poverty is not on the outside. It's not what you see that makes you poor. It's in here. It's in your mind. You're poor in your mind. And that's essentially just what's translating and manifesting itself in the natural, on the outside. But the reality is that poverty is not on the outside. And people go through tough times. And there are difficult times. And there's ups and downs. But you know what? The people of God need to lose this poor mentality. This mentality that poverty is what we should expect. Just like in last week's message, we had to change the way of thinking about sickness. That many times religion has brought us to interpret sickness as something that's necessary after a bad decision, after a sin, right? As it's often associated with. But the priesthood, what God is showing us today, is that we need to change the way that we think. When you allow this new priesthood to govern your life, the kingdom that God showed us through his son Jesus, that's really what he sent his son for. Yeah, we may say, oh, he brought us for salvation. Of course, we know that. But if all you think, if we just say Jesus is salvation and then that's it, that's where it ends, well, you're going to live a very shallow relationship with God. There's nothing deep. There's nothing profound. It's just going to be salvation. That's it. Forgiveness of sin. That's it. There's so much more. Your life needs to change when you come to know God. It needs to be a complete change of the way that you think. You know, because there's this priesthood that essentially governs a large portion of the children of God, that keeps them enslaved, that keeps them down, doesn't allow them to progress in their personal relationship with God, much less in their secular, everyday life, in their family, at their job. It's just keeping them down. But God is bringing a word that is not just for the church. It's something that needs to be applied in our day-to-day lives, in our relationships with our family members and our loved ones, with our co-workers, the way that we do our work, things that we plan for our future, our vision. What do we see in our 5-year future, 10-year future? And though, of course, we don't know exactly what it is, but there are some people that don't expect any change. They just expect everything to be the same. Exactly the way that it is now is the way that it's going to be in the future. Why? Because their mentality has always been the same. But God is showing us now through his word that there needs to come change. And it needs to happen with a change in priesthood. It needs to happen in our mentality. Who's governing us there? Who do you have up there? Who's governing up there? Is it the law? Is it just a knowledge of the word? You could know it front to back, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have a change in mentality. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to dance in tough times, because maybe you had this really nice job and you lost it. Maybe you were let go for whatever reason. and you haven't been able to get back up. Why? Haven't you ever asked yourself, why haven't you been able to get back up? Has anyone ever asked you, hey, get up? What are you doing? Right? If you remember that story in the Bible, when Jesus was going around, there was a bunch of sick people around the pool, right? And essentially every now and then an angel would come around and stir the waters, and only whoever got there first, essentially, right, would get healed. And those who didn't get there on time, sorry, tough luck, right? But he came across a man that had been there for years. And then when Jesus approached him, well, he was like, essentially just placing his complaints, why he hasn't been able to get out of that situation. I haven't had anyone to take me. Whenever the angel comes down, someone else beats me to it. Pastor said this, and I thought it was really funny. He's like, it's just an excuse. Stop being so lazy. And it may seem like a hard word, but look, you have the ability to get out of your situation. The Almighty God is before you, and he's not asking you for excuses. He's asking you, what do you want? That's the reality. Look, what do you want? Do you want to stay in that situation? Do you want to stay in that state of mind? Do you want to stay in that emotional state? Because you may have both of your legs, but you may have your emotional life is just in pieces. You just are paralyzed emotionally. You can't love. You can't care for someone. You can't forgive. You can't move on. You think that you'll never find another person to replace that person that left you, or that you left. Who knows how it happened? But do you want that? Is that what you want? Are you going to put up excuses? Are you going to say, well, I can't do it. I can't move on. This is just the way it's going to be. Well, if that's the way that you want to think, then continue with that old priesthood. Keep going. Go ahead. Keep going. You choose. You are going to write your future. You are going to decide how your life is going to be moving forward. If you want it to be the same way that it's always been, then that's the way it's always going to be. But God is saying to you today, like he said to many people that he came across, when Jesus was in his ministry, he came across a lot of people and he said to them, what do you want? I'm paraphrasing here, but in summary, it's like, what do you want? 4 simple words. But many people put up many hundreds of thousands of words of excuses as to why they won't be able to get out of that situation, when Jesus is just saying, God is just saying to you right now, what do you want? Decide. Do you want to stay with that old priesthood, that old mentality, that stubbornness that's not going to allow you to essentially get out of that funk, to get out of that bitter situation, bitter mentality, that bitter way of looking at life? If that's what you want, hey, no one's going to change that. No one could force you to change. You have to decide. You have to confess with your own mouth, just like I have to for my own life. I have to say, God, I'm not happy with this. Well, God's going to say, well, change it. Okay. I've come to realize that the power to make the change is in me. God has essentially said, well, you have the ability now. I live in you, that priesthood. If that's what it is, if you say that you have Jesus in you, then you need to have the new priesthood that he established. But you know what? If you say, I have Jesus in me, but you continue to live and see things through the eye of that old priesthood, that's a false priesthood. That's essentially what it is. There's no other true priesthood other than the one that Jesus established. So this is the question. And once again, this is the summary that I want to give to you. And it's a simple question. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want to realize your dreams? Or do you just want to say it's impossible? I'll never be able to do it. Yeah, look at my situation. Look at me financially. Maybe you've been going through years of life living with that old priesthood, things that have been keeping you down, not being able to move forward. More than anything, it's been your own natural self, feeding you lies and essentially keeping you down. It could be someone else, but at the end of the day, we have no one else to blame. If we want to move forward, if we want to progress in life, in our relationship with God, then here's the opportunity for there to be a change. But we have to decide. I have to decide. You have to decide. What do you want moving forward? God has put no limitations on his people. It's people, in the Pharisees and the Sadducees, those interpreters of the word, which really they're just people that are in this false priesthood, which was abolished, which was destroyed, which was removed. People that want to continue with that. Well, if they want to continue that way, no one can change their mind. I hope that God touches them and that revelation comes to their lives so that they can leave that just sad way of thinking and find the true kingdom of God. But for you today, just make that decision, make that choice. What do you want? Present it to God. Say, God, this is what I want. You know what God's going to say? Go get it. Go get it. You want happiness? Go get it. It's there. It's actually already inside of you. You just don't know it. It's been suppressed by other things. But you want prosperity in your work environment? Go get it. What we need to do is essentially say, God, I want to abandon that old way of thinking. I want to embrace the new one. With this, I want to say God bless you. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this video message. Please continue to visit this channel. Weekly, we will be having a new video in summary of the message that we received in that same weekend. So God bless you. Take care. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. God bless.